I'd like to take a moment to thank the Blockchain Academy. The Blockchain Academy is an educational training firm offering blockchain training to the enterprise. The Blockchain Academy offers courses for both management and developers, offering delivery online and in live classrooms. The Blockchain Academy works with enterprise clients to create and deliver innovative training programs globally. They recently announced a new blockchain course targeted towards attorneys. To learn more about the Blockchain Academy, visit them at www.theblockchainacademy.com.
This is the Blockchain 360 podcast. Blockchain 360 is a podcast of interviews and discussions about the current state and direction of blockchain. Thank you for joining us today. If this is your first time listening, then thank you for coming. The Blockchain 360 podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at our website, blockchain360.co. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter at Blockchain360. All links discussed today are included in the show notes.
My name is Brian Ilson, and I am your host here on Blockchain 360. And today's guest is Adam Helfgott, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Madhive. And prior to Madhive, Adam built and sold marketing technology companies eCamp.net and Lookbooks.com, and advised leading companies including IMG, WME, and GEM, an enterprise blockchain company. Madhive is a blockchain-powered database management platform that enables the secure and transparent transfer of campaign data between publishers, video networks, and advertisers. A combination of fraud and weakness within the ad tech supply chain costs the industry an average of $8.2 billion a year. Madhive's solution to this gaping problem is to leverage blockchain and AI-backed technology to accurately track data as it travels along the supply chain from creative to consumer browser. Adam, welcome to Blockchain 360.
Thank you. Really excited to be here.
Great. So, how is it you even came into blockchain?
Just like a lot of other people, I came about 2012. I'm an avid Redditor, and I saw a bunch of posts. Kind of came across my feed about mining and this thing called Bitcoin. Read the white paper. I'll admit I wasn't really a true believer in the sense I didn't give it enough time to really understand the implications of what Bitcoin and blockchain can really do. But I'm a tinkerer at heart, and spun up a miner. It kind of was a little too much work for me at the time, and I kind of threw it away. But as Bitcoin gained popularity, and I would check in on it, I would see the price increasing, and I think, oh, that's cute. And and I started. I owned a few, started trading them, got really into Litecoin a couple of years later. Some of my employees, when I was at Lookbooks, we were it's like a hobby of ours, and been trading up and down ever really since. And that's really how that happened.
Well, that's an interesting thing. So where is it? So your interest in Bitcoin was really the impetus for understanding blockchain.
Yep.
So, but this side trading that you actually did was really what caused you to look at it further?
No.
No. Okay.
So the side trading, so I built a trading bot a long time ago, like over a Christmas break at my mother's house in Ohio, and I was just getting into financial trading and just in general. I'm like, I know how to do a lot of things. I have no idea what to execute different types of trades are. I just didn't understand them. I was getting into trading stocks and everything else. I didn't really know how anything worked. So I'm like, I'll play with on BTCE exchange, which is now defunct mostly. I was used their API, and I built a three-way trading bot between Litecoin, Bitcoin, and USD to get the arbitrage out, and I actually did pretty well. And I started seeing and then within 6 months, real finance people came in and built their own bots, and it went away. Be able to make 40 cents every 2 minutes went away, and that's what but it was fascinating. But that still didn't really do it for me yet, where it was still kind of a toy, and I didn't connect it to the enterprise at all. You brought up some of the companies I advised, and after lookbooks.com that sold in 2014, kind of trying to figure out what to do.
Sure.
And a mutual friend of the founder of Gem in Venice Beach, Los Angeles, they were looking to think about their company in new ways. And I'm pretty good at product and technology in general, and working in the enterprise and connecting in new types of technology into the enterprise. I understand the enterprise pretty well. And so it was there that I was kind of taught that the concept of blockchain, separated from what a cryptocurrency is, actually is an innovative platform inside the enterprise.
Right.
And and how it might apply to the healthcare supply chain, or into carbon credits, or all these other use cases that we're seeing. It actually had the aha moment of like, oh, that's how that actually happens. And is that that if I have this ledger that everyone is talking to in this safe permission manner, that is cross departmental, or cross enterprise, cross company, that no one actually owns.
Right.
Then there's a new way of doing business, and then what smart contracts bring, and having this world computer, this was right in 2014, right when the Ethereum white paper had just kind of came out, and or 2015 or so. It's been out. We were looking at all the different blockchains. Ethereum was still in development. I had gotten into the Ethereum ICO just because I was just playing with all this stuff.
Sure.
But I didn't really understand. I didn't really think about it far enough to understand it. I was really busy building another startup. And I look back at that time now like my mind was telling me to look at this stuff really closely because I was playing with it, but I didn't really take it that seriously as a game changer in business for some reason, until my experience at Gem, where the founder there, Micah, he's a amazing guy at seeing the future like this.
Sure.
And I saw how it would work in the enterprise. And that's where it kind of clicked, like, oh, this is another tool in my tool belt to think about startups in general, and how we can change things.
So tell me about Madhive.
So Madhive is it's just like any startup. We started with a core idea, and then it slowly, and then how we implement that slowly changes. And so Madhive started as a way to improve the way people are starting to consume long-form video content, which is simply television, right?
Sure.
And so television is changing in the way that we consume it. It's like we see it on Netflix now. We watch Hulu. And these things are all called over-the-top television.
Right.
I had built while I was doing this Gem thing. I also built an OTT station for WME IMG called Made to Measure. It's a fashion focused OTT, really great content. An old friend of mine is the executive producer of it.
Wait a second,
Yep.
you've made this reference twice now.
Yeah.
OTT. So explain to the listeners what OTT really is.
So OTT means over the top, which simply means I am going over the top of the cable box, right? And so So cable delivery, we all have a cable box in our house, to then pipe in, CNN and all these other, cable channels. And the reason why they do that isn't only for the $40 a month we pay them for the cable box. It's actually for the advertising that gets piped into our house in an addressable manner, right? And so and when I say addressable, that means they don't really know who you are, but they know like the demographic where this cable box lives, and then they sell that in context
US
of
Census.
content. U.S. Census based,
Sure.
like the DMA they call it, and all this type of stuff. And so they sell this advertising across the network right there. So when you have a Time Warner box, or in New York it's now Charter Spectrum. Charter has a huge office in Midtown Manhattan where they sell advertising against all the shows on their thing. So over the top is going over that, right? And so they're using the internet connection, like when you watch Hulu, when you watch Hulu on an internet connection supplied by Spectrum, and you watch an ad, Charter's not making any money there.
Okay.
And so that's all that means. Is
So
that
over the top is really through the cable pipes.
through the internet pipes provided by whoever.
Right.
And so YouTube is technically an OTT, but in the industry, it's not really considered one. It would be more like a Hulu, a Netflix, ABC Go, HBO Go, all those, things that you would install on a Apple TV or a Roku or a smart TV, things like that.
How did you transition yourself from being an entrepreneur to coming into the advertising space? I'm not a little clear on.
It's so lookbooks was on the other side. Lookbooks, we like, how does a cover of Vogue magazine get created? That's
right.
Kind of with software to facilitate that, right? And so we would the software would manage the relationships for all the artists that would produce a cover of a magazine, a commercial, things like
Right.
that. And so I really had a lot of exposure to the creative side of advertising and the rights management and all that stuff behind it. And then it was in that creation of bridging that with making this OTT station, where when we got to the advertising side, the monetization side, where I saw in OTT specifically, it's been largely ignored. It's been this market that's almost 100% year-over-year growth for the past few years. Right now, it's super big, but a year and a half ago, it wasn't as known as that big, and the ad tech companies weren't paying attention to it. So the technology to deliver an ad or even the video felt pretty archaic. It felt like late 90s, early 2000s of how it was. I mean, it's and then in the ad operations of these major companies, there might be 20, 25 people collating spreadsheets.
Wow.
And so when I see that kind of stuff,
Sure.
I kind of run to it. So because I can solve those problems. It's like I call it like the aspirin approach, and
Sure.
then vitamins later. Like, let me solve all these things for you.
Let's solve the immediate problem, and now let's work
Right.
about developing a healthy environment.
Right. And so the healthy environment is blockchain, right?
Right. So some of the many problems. What are the main problems that are facing the advertising industry, and why is blockchain that answer?
So there's many actors in the advertising industry, right? And some would say there are no problems. And from one point of view, you can agree with that. It's a market, right? There's a demand side, which is the advertisers, like Ford wanting to show off a new truck.
Right.
And then there's the sell side, which is ABC wanting to monetize Scandal, like their show, right?
Right.
Or Yahoo wanting to put a banner ad, or Google wanting to put something next to search. That's all the sell side. And then there's this thing in between those two sides that is called ad tech on the internet. Just a preface is that in television selling, it's pretty that simple. That the demand and the sell side and demand side is they're all in. There's not that much in between, because, as you said, it's kind of census based.
Right.
And so about 85.
Well, it's not targeted. I mean,
it's not
macro targeted, but it's not micro.
It's not micro targeted. Because of that, about 85 cents of every dollar spent on advertising in television goes to the publisher itself, right? So if you're ABC, you sell an ad for $1, you're going to get about 85 cents. Once you're ABC on demand for ABC Go or something like that on the internet, that 85 cents turns into at best 30 cents.
Why? Why the
Because of the other thing you said about now the internet's here and I could target, right? And so there's all these companies have popped up in the middle to say I can target. They then sell that idea of targeting to the demand side, because obviously someone would say, well, doesn't need to show a McDonald's ad to someone that doesn't eat McDonald's, right? Or things like that. So now the demand side is demanding that they use the internet for what it's great for, which is like one-to-one communication on a mass scale. And then so all these companies have come up in the middle to service that, and they all take a piece of the action.
Well, how is blockchain well suited to fix this problem?
So, at its heart, blockchain being a new kind of transparent data store removes, there was a blog post, and I forget who it was, a couple of weeks ago, or I think it was on Twitter, that blockchains are great at removing censorship. That
Right.
if you want a piece of a supply chain or a piece of anything, and you want it to be censorship resistant, use a blockchain. If it doesn't need that piece of it, maybe don't use a blockchain. And
Right.
and that's kind of a guardrail that we use a lot here in our engineering team and product team, is that what things need to be on a blockchain, what things don't. You don't, and especially in ad tech when you're dealing with at full scale, millions, if not sort of billions of queries per day. And as probably anyone listening knows, that blockchains are, even with Moore's law and everything else, we're probably a couple of years away at best of servicing something of that scale.
Sure.
But what happens is that a piece of inventory at let's say a Scandal on ABC Go, generally the infrastructure isn't set up where ABC can understand who the consumer is that's looking at that right now. So Adobe has popped up and created a product called Adobe's they have a data management platform,
Right.
and they then sell the idea of who that person is, and they take 10 cents off that. And then someone else may then pop up in the middle and aggregate that information, and then someone in the middle will actually broker the deal. And so they'll go and buy that piece of inventory from ABC, let's say at 1 penny, and then go over to the demand side and sell it for 80 cents.
Right.
And so now simply because there's
Great margins.
right, yeah. So there's this big advertising conference to speak of margins called in Cannes in France, in I think it's end of June. We were there, and all these major ad tech companies, there's all rent a $35 million yacht to sell their services on. And and I was on one of them for a while, and I'm friends with all these guys. But when you start seeing, $200,000 boat rentals for 3 days to sell more services, there might be a information arbitrage problem in the market.
Thinking.
Yeah. So that's so it's ripe for this type of disruption where if the seller and the buyer of the ad can understand the dynamics of what was sold, things may happen differently. There's a whole piece of this puzzle that we haven't really crossed yet, which is the advent of programmatic advertising, which really turned we're talking about blockchains and then cryptocurrencies and things like that. There's what's really at play is economies and market dynamics and things like that. And in television, the other reason why that 85 cents is there instead of the 30 cents is that television's a scarce resource, right? So I can only show one ad, at a time to a person. On a web page, I can show many ads, and and people scroll and all these things. There's all these companies have come up to say, hey, has the person scrolled to my ad yet? And then if they haven't scrolled to my ad yet, then you won't get paid. But you have to pay for that service to tell you if that.
Right.
And then so there's like tons and tons of stacks of things that happen in digital, but it's not. But ads on the internet are not a scarce resource.
So where does Madhive fit into the programmatic?
So we fit into a few places, and really where I've been focused lately is that problem I described before of ABC selling a piece of unknown inventory, a piece of mispriced inventory, to this thing called a demand side platform, which sits in the middle. That their job is, how much cheap inventory can I buy? I have amazing, machine learning data sets, and I buy data from, all of. I might hook up to, an oil change company to understand, who needs to buy a new car, all these kind of things, and they layer all this data on top of it and resell it. Is that if we can move that information into the supply side, and then tag the inventory before it gets down the pipe, then we can move that economic value into the supply. And
Right.
that's really what
And that's what Madhive is trying to do.
that's what Madhive's future state and goal is trying to do, is to create a data trading network that's peer-to-peer,
Sure.
that happens at the supply side to increase the value of the inventory before it hits these pipes. So maybe not as much of this ad tech is needed, in the sense there of like each person providing a different level of service. And the reason for that is that the big elephant in the room is Facebook, Google, and now Amazon.
Well, we're going to get to them
Yeah,
in a minute.
okay.
So, but yeah.
We'll get there.
Well, what are the main critiques that you have of blockchain, and how do you actually respond to those criticisms?
I mean, the number one thing we get is the scaling, right?
Right.
Is that
Huge problem.
huge problem, and obviously in Bitcoin, it's the kind of news du jour of anyone in this industry. Is
Right.
that it costs $8 and $3 to $8 and many minutes to confirm a transaction, which kind of some people think makes Bitcoin pointless, and other, depending if you think it's a payment platform or a store of value, and then and that's just the consensus algorithm, right? And so Madhive uses private blockchains on top of a public ledger that we're creating, that we don't have a consensus algorithm that is as powerful as Bitcoin's is, and so we can get faster QPS. The other real reason that we are focused on this OTT thing is that there's a lot less traffic. It's so mobile traffic on mobile phones is in the billions could be in the billions of an hour, and on television, if I focus on a market by market, so in like Boise, Idaho, in that market, we're in the tens of thousands of QPS. And if we start filtering out certain traffic, we can actually get to a certain amount of scale on private blockchains. We're working with IBM's Hyperledger and their Fabric project,
Sure.
Which can get to about 20 to 30,000 QPS. We don't have our stuff all running in we're not looking at all the traffic. We're on like a client by client basis, right? So
right.
we don't see that type of scale there. So that's the other, this emerging market is great to look at because it's not at scale.
So the scaling issue seems to be a big issue, and you're saying that actually the Hyperledger platform actually solves that?
It's solving it.
It's solving it.
It's not. They haven't solved it yet.
Right.
There's this guy John Walpert who runs IBM's blockchain initiative, and it's a major issue for them is to do this. There's also in Ethereum and Bitcoin and the concept of state channels, which
Sure.
is like what Rated Network and Lightning and whatnot, that where you have one blockchain transaction and then you kind of create this channel between two counterparties to deliver information back and forth. That's another thing that we're playing with in our labs here, is to solve that issue as well.
Can blockchain actually be adopted at the enterprise level, say in the next year?
I think it'll take longer than a year for it to happen for delivery of like real-time programmatic advertising. As there's many other use cases that we haven't really talked about yet, but that a lot of the other major issue in advertising and in the enterprise, just like in a lot of other ones, is reconciliation of databases that doing different things. So in advertising, you have this buy-side ad server and the sell-side ad server, and most of the time at the end of the day, they have different numbers, they have different counts.
Right.
And so then there's still a process where Microsoft Excel is in heavy use, and of people collating that together. If there was a shared permission ledger and a smart contract in between them, it would resolve it in real time,
Right.
or close to real time.
Right.
And so that's another, and there's a bunch of other blockchain startups and advertising that are focused on that issue.
Well, you brought up Facebook and Google.
Yeah.
They've become these giant behemoths.
Mhm.
So how is anyone outside of them actually going to start to compete with them? I mean,
Yeah.
that seems to be a huge problem.
It's a huge problem, and it's the one that it's so there's this huge downward pressure of Facebook and Google to own this entire market. They have very hefty market caps in their stock price, and they need to they haven't really, Facebook especially, the television industry is like around 70 to 100 billion dollars, and
Combined. Right.
and and they haven't really gotten any of that yet, right, in television. And so, so there's this huge pressure to get that. And then you have this idea, and this is where I get pretty excited, is that, Facebook especially, and Google, Amazon also is coming. Like Amazon's data set is probably, like if you're Facebook, you should be threatened by Amazon, what they have. They know what someone wants to buy before they want to buy it. They can then move that data down the pipeline and show you an ad for that, whatever it is.
That's true.
Anywhere, and that's happening. Like
right.
There's Amazon launched Amazon Publisher Services a couple months ago, and they're giving away tools to publishers to do just that. And so it's pretty interesting. But Amazon, and Facebook, they own the supply chain soup to nuts. They own the demand side all the way to the sell side. They have the inventory. They have everything in between, all the analytics, all the data management, all the fraud verification, all this stuff. There's a lot of cases where they grade their own homework, and like Facebook 2 days ago just got caught for saying that there's 31 million males in these markets when only 20 million people live in this place.
Right.
That's type of stuff happens all the time. But they do own the supply chain soup to nuts, and they don't need a blockchain to connect it all together. They have
it internally.
They have it internally. Outside of that, there's a huge disadvantage that we have these verticalized layers that communicate with each other on APIs. And how I equate that would be that if you were talking Chinese right now and I'm talking English and we had a Google Translate between us, communication would be pretty sloppy. And that's how most of ad tech outside Facebook and Google communicates today.
Sloppily.
And it's very sloppily, and there's a lot of loss of information, which creates many dollars made for those people in the middle.
Right.
But what the consequence of that has been is that advertising as a whole in the United States and abroad grows like 5-10% a year. However, everyone outside of Facebook and Google, it's actually stayed even or it's declined. And so that capture of new business has only gone to those 2 or 3 guys.
Right.
And I believe it's not because every human being is moving to these platforms, which a lot of people are there, but it's that this supply chain is so inefficient that
the existing
supply chain outside of those guys is so inefficient that they just capture all the new revenue, like because they can, and they are very smart. And so a blockchain architecture can start replicating what those guys have internally in a decentralized manner.
I would like to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, the Blockchain Academy. The Blockchain Academy is an educational training firm offering blockchain training for developers and stakeholders. The Blockchain Academy is currently offering the following live courses: Blockchain Security, Hyperledger Developer Workshop, and Ethereum 0 to D app. Visit the Blockchain Academy's website for course outlines and course dates. The Blockchain Academy's courses can be delivered as a company-specific training, tailor-made to fit your organizational needs, delivered both on-site and online. The Blockchain Academy's training is cost-effective, flexible, and can be conducted in a manner that best suits your organizational needs. To learn more about the Blockchain Academy, visit them at www.theblockchainacademy.com. Now, Madhive is a founding member of AdLedger.
Yeah.
What is AdLedger, and what is the goal of AdLedger?
So AdLedger is a foundation that's outside of Madhive that we've seen the need to start up. Based upon what I just said, is that it's for the industry outside of this triopoly to grow. There needs to be some sort of consensus among what a new protocol layer may look like. When we're looking at it as blockchains, the industry may go somewhere else to do something else, but we think blockchain is the answer. So we have agencies, we have publishers, we have the people in the middle, kind of all working together to figure out if we were going to take all this verticalized architecture and turn it into a kind of a flat platform. What would the API spec look like to do that? How would we all communicate? And so it's
And that's what Ad Ledger.
That's what Ad Ledger does, and we we just are breaking up into working groups, and we're creating what are some straw men and real world problems that we can develop against to figure this out. So one of the first ones we're looking at is this new law that's coming into Europe called the GDPR, which is a consumer rights law. It's going into effect in May, where it'll effectively make targeting of an ad illegal. Illegal, like where the fine is like something like 4% of your gross revenue.
Wow.
I mean, it's like
serious.
It's very, very serious. Like, imagine Google broke that law. Like, how many billions of dollars that would be, right? So that pressure to solve that issue for everyone, of all these companies, is pretty big. So next week, my business partner Stacy Huggins is going to be in London, Amsterdam, and Cologne, and we're releasing and announcing this a solve for the GDPR law that's coming into effect in May. It's a very simple but effective blockchain approach to have the right to be forgotten finalized. So that announcement is next week.
Well, why did the European community actually come up with this law? I mean, you would think that having the ability to micro-target individuals with regards to ads would be a positive.
Yeah, it's a huge debate. Some of the advertising that gets shown and how it gets shown is it can be kind of spooky, right? I mean,
right.
It's is it okay for when you're playing Candy Crush for it to be listening to your television to know what ads are being shown, so that later
That's true.
is like that happens today in the United States.
Right.
Is that okay? Like, did you consent to your microphone being on? You kind of did, maybe in some terms of service deep in when you wanted to play Candy Crush, or maybe not. Or maybe it's that, and there's many technologies like that, and so the European Union being maybe a little more consumer friendly than the United States, that's more enterprise friendly, has decided that consumers should probably be in control of that, and so they've switched it around and have said that consumers can opt in.
Opt in or opt out?
Oh, you're defaulted out.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the idea of Ad Ledger then is to actually bring together historically different groups of people to share data. Isn't there a huge resistance of that? I mean, it's like if I'm that specific layer, am I able to actually, or do I even want to share that with my competitors or with anyone else in the value chain?
I mean, the short answer is, yeah, you're exactly right. Like, no, and that's why it hasn't changed. And the programmatic advertising kind of got its start maybe about a decade ago, and it hasn't changed. And but what's kind of cool is that Facebook and Google have gotten so good at this that
they have a lot of data points.
They have a lot of data points. Is that now that if I'm a big agency, if I'm Omnicom, it's much easier for me to go use the Facebook, ad platform and say, yeah, I mean, like my media plan for McDonald's is to go do X, Y, and Z. I can kind of just plug that media plan into Facebook and then go home. And, and that's a problem for everyone that's not Facebook. And so there's been there's all these more and more technology to try to service that, but the reach is a problem, right? And so Facebook can reach billions and billions of people, and if I'm like Hulu, I can reach 50 million people, or actually no, 6 million, sorry, on Hulu. Is that it's kind of, if I can either go to Facebook and reach billions of people, or I can just call up Hulu and reach 5 million people and then call up 20 more Hulus. It's my job. That's a kind of a shitty job.
Right.
Excuse my language. If I have to
That's
do
a
that.
technical term. You're okay with that.
Okay. Got it. And so that's the issue, is that it's just much harder to work, right? And so if there was a data sharing platform that didn't, so there are a lot of companies that have come up that go and aggregate inventory from all these places, but then they go and take 20-30% of the margin. So it's like, so it's like so the supply side, so if I'm Hulu and now in order to be included in this set with all these things to make it easier like Facebook, but now Hulu has to take like a 30-40% hit to be included in that.
Right.
And
Well, that
That's
hit
the
actually
problem.
is a huge incentive for them to want to join this platform.
Exactly. So that's what we're saying is that actually, let's get rid of that if that hit, and maybe we can start competing against these guys because we're starving the publishers. The publishers are getting hit. And the other side is that Facebook is Facebook has two approaches, and so does Google and so does Amazon, but Facebook is starting to get into custom original content, right?
Right.
I think they're going to spend $1 billion a year on content this
And
year.
Amazon is spending a tremendous
Amazon is
amount
spending
too.
a tremendous amount, but theirs is not ad supported yet. It's just so there's video on
Yet.
demand but they have your Prime subscription, and so you pay your $100 a year for that. And
Apple actually has made announcements that they're going to be spending a tremendous amount.
yep, and they have that one show, and that might be ad supported. It's hard to tell, and so what's happening here is that the ad supported content is it's that so Facebook is going after they want to go after the direct sales teams of ABC or Fox and all these guys and say,
Right.
just give us all your inventory and we'll sell it for you. And so is NBC Universal just going to shut down 10 floors of its Midtown office building and say, here, Facebook, now you control our revenue source? Or
Well, they're not going to want to, but there's
Right.
probably huge pressure
Right.
to do that.
Exactly. So Ad Ledger, blockchain, new Madhive, and other technology companies looking at this is, hey, here's maybe another alternative.
Right.
And that's our top line pitch, is that maybe media shouldn't be owned by Facebook and Google. Yeah.
Well, the idea of transparency is, of course, very important. How is transparency defined currently in the advertising industry?
It's mostly on these ad auction dynamics, right? Is that there's this information arbitrage between the buyer and seller of how much did I pay for this piece of inventory, and then how much did I sell it to you for? And so if I buy it for 10 cents and I sell it to you for $1, the company that, if you're Unilever or Procter and Gamble and you're spending billions of dollars a year in advertising, and then you realize that the person you're buying it from is making a 100%, 90% margin, that may upset you a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, and that's where we are today. Is
Right.
that Mark Prichter from Procter and Gamble has said, hey, if the supply chain doesn't clean itself up, I'm going to pull $1 billion.
Right.
That happened almost a year ago, and he said you guys have a year to clean this stuff up. So that's why it's the money. The money's saying, wait, I'm missing out on reach. For the same money, I can reach twice as many people. I know I can.
Exactly.
And so it's the agencies in the middle, the buying agencies, that are keeping that.
Well, you've established why the industry needs more transparency. Can blockchain actually be the technology to bring this to fruition?
So I believe so, yes. And I don't think it's and through the past year of working in this industry and really getting a handle on it, I don't think it's as direct as just having a shared ledger that says, hey, Ford, this is what happened in this last ad campaign, go negotiate better. I don't think that's the answer, is that
Right.
showing transparent auction dynamics. While that's great to show that, I don't think it's going to fix the problem. The problem is that why did that happen to begin with? Why couldn't the supply side mark up their inventory to a market price? Why did they have to undersell their stuff so much? And it's because they don't have the technology, because they've been so starved of just delivering an advertisement to understand who the person is, which is why people pay for it, right? So, I'll pay 10 cents for a generic impression that's coming from New York State, but I'll pay 40 cents if I know that's a male that's between 30 and 50 that makes $150,000 a year.
Right.
And so if that information can be given to the supply side can negotiate themselves better, and actually get a true price for what their inventory is worth. And doing that will start to clean up the supply chain just by fixing the market dynamics.
Right, because as you mentioned before, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and even potentially Apple has, they have so much information. They just dominate the digital space.
At the supply side.
As the supply side. So what you're saying is basically that the blockchain can help advertisers and publishers compete by creating an alternative platform for them.
Yep.
Now, how is that going to help them, though, in terms of the delivery of the product, say, on those sites? Or is that even going to be a part of it? Or is that going to be like a different channel?
So it's a different channel. I mean, ad tech today, to go back to the thing of where we were before, in the sense of like, what are the people saying, like, why is blockchain not going to work and things like that. Blockchain is not going to replace an ad server. Like Google's, it's funny because Google also controls most of the actual technology behind serving an ad. They have this thing called, DoubleClick.
Right.
And
well, they bought them.
Right. They bought DoubleClick, and then there's a bunch of other ad servers, but majority of advertising goes through DoubleClick. Comcast also owns a on video thing called Freewheel, and there's a bunch of other. Those ad servers are great. They handle the scale that's needed. Like Madhive's not going to build a new ad server that's going to serve billions of ads a day and collate and do all this kind of stuff. Those are, DoubleClick has been an iterative project and super mature software that, like to think that we're going to replace that today is kind of, silly. And funny enough, Madhive hosts all its stuff on top of the Google Cloud, and it's a great platform, and so yes, maybe we can rebuild an ad server with their own stuff. I don't, so it's not really our focus there to replace, the fundamental architecture of ad serving. It's simply, can we use a blockchain network to empower the supply side to then reprice their inventory,
right,
to then go through the same channels that already exist.
So advertising fraud is a huge problem. So how is this going to actually help? I mean, what type of advertising fraud is there?
Yep. So fraud is a huge problem. Many billions of dollars, and there's many different categories of fraud. And one of the common ones that happens, and it's that an advertisement on, I keep using ABC because they're a premium channel, is premium content is very, very valuable. I may, on television or an OTT, I might get a $40 CPM. A CPM is 1,000 advertisements, right? And so, but if it's like there's a channel on Roku called the Mullet channel, and so advertising on the Mullet channel is probably worth about $6. But when I submit the bid request from the Mullet channel into the ad exchange that monetizes it for me, it's kind of an unencrypted pass through of data. There's this protocol called OpenRTB, real-time bidding, and there's a lot of people what might decide to spoof the domain of the Mullet channel and call it ABC, and then so in the exchange they're not verifying this, and then in the exchange I now can then say, oh, I'll buy some ABC content and pay $40.
Right.
And then that's really not ABC. So there's a lot of fraud there, and there's a ton of stuff there.
What percentage of advertising dollars are spent on fraud? I mean, are there numbers like that?
Yeah, it's in the north of $5 to $8 billion a year.
Wasted based on this type of fraud.
Wasted based on this type of fraud. The other and then the other types of fraud are there's bots that'll just view ads. There's I might be paying, and then there's this like gray area that if you're a major publisher on the web and there's 10 ads on that page, but the person didn't scroll to that ad, do you pay? Should that ad be paid for or not? If I didn't see it, if I saw the ad for 1 second, is that payable, or do I need to see it for 3 seconds?
Right.
So like Facebook has decided, I forget the exact number, so I could be wrong, but it's something like 1 second or less than a second. They decide
if it's displayed for less than a second or less,
you pay.
Wow.
And because they've decided, well, people saw it, and they scroll and and then so there's this constant battle. There's these companies like Integral Ad Science that has code that checks all this type of stuff.
Right.
They've just recently, after many years, Facebook has allowed IAS to come in and audit their stuff.
Right.
And it's still not perfect in the sense of how they're letting them audit it, but they have to audit everybody else. There's another company called Moat that does this, that just sold to Oracle for $800 million. Yeah, it's an interesting place.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
Well, you also hear about organizations that unwittingly fund terrorist organizations or hate groups because their ads are served on those organization website. Well, how is a publisher like Google or Facebook, or how are they actually trying to resolve that issue? I mean, are there algorithms out there, and how effective are those algorithms, and are those algorithms actually correct? Are they working?
So that's a interesting question too, and so that happens at the exchange level. So Google owns a thing called AdX, where you can plug your website into it and say, here's my advertising spots, fill it, and then you get a check at the end of the month every month.
Right.
And then Facebook has this thing called Facebook Audience Network, where they put a pixel on your site, and it's kind of the same thing. And and so if I own terror.com and I'm funding terrorism,
do you?
Yeah, it's actually how we fund Madhive. Madhive's a terrorist organization.
Promo there for it.
But that's how we. So there's a vetting process that should probably happen. There's a lot of this stuff is automated. There's a lot of and then there's the other stuff thing called brand safety, which is kind of where you went as well, which is if I upload, as myself that, I happen to be on vacation and I witnessed a beheading, and I then upload that to YouTube because I'm like, hey, I'm on vacation and I saw a beheading. This is kind of crazy content. And then someone gets really popular and they decide, and Google has an algorithm that says, at 100,000 views, start putting an ad in front of this thing,
sure,
and I get a check.
It's the monetization of
right,
the process.
and that all happens automatically. I'm personally not funding terrorism. I'm just living here in New York, and that's great that I got this content. But McDonald's probably doesn't want to have their ad on a pre-roll video before a beheading video.
No.
But that's what's happened, and stuff like that has happened a lot, and that's the problem. And so they have content-aware things that can look for bad content.
Well, how good are those algorithms?
They're not great. I think they're probably getting a lot better over the past 6 months, when I'm pretty sure McDonald's being one of them and a couple other advertisers just pulled their dollars off YouTube.
Right.
So if you're going to pull billions of dollars off YouTube,
people pay attention.
Yeah, Google will pay attention and put some good engineers on that project.
Right.
But it'll probably behoove them to not, they're not incentivized to stop showing ads.
Right.
So it's an interesting problem.
Well, how is blockchain then going to be leveraged to protect against this type of fraud or, promotion of ads on undesirable platforms?
So, there's a few ways, to look at it. One, there's this whitelisting. There's a way to whitelist the demand side. Blockchain is not going to solve every problem. The blockchain can't itself stop fraud. Blockchain creates a shared database that would allow permissioned people to check to see if certain information is there to make decisions against in a realish time type environment. And so, you could theoretically create a crypto economic system for incentives for the market at large and viewers to tag bad videos,
right?
And then that could be a data point that's bought against that. If there was a cryptocurrency called fraud coin or something like that, and then there's this a distributed application that allowed people to say, hey, this is a bad video, and then they escrow some coins for that, and then when you can make a whole economic system to
absolutely
decide that, and then McDonald's can put some fraud coins in to say, I only want to buy ads that have been validated by this fraud coin system.
Sure.
There's probably someone looking to do something like that, and there'd be an interesting project there. That's one way you can use the ideas of these new economic models that we can create with blockchain to incentivize good behavior. And then there's ways that the supply side can, like kind of what I was talking about before, where I can codify what my content really is and who the user really is,
right,
and have that travel down the whole supply chain, and have decisions made against that. And right now that like that Google Translate between each party,
right,
there's information loss at every step of the way.
So Madhive's product is actually to work in this space. So before we actually started this podcast, you were saying that part of the original vision that you had for Madhive was very specific to people understanding, but that you're actually progressing to a higher level type of product. So tell me about these products that you have and what solutions are you offering?
Sure. So a lot of it goes back to that aspirin vitamin analogy, right? And so before we can innovate and create a new platform to do really cool stuff on, you have to have a bit of a clean slate right now, and a lot of our products to date have been focused on solving certain ad operations problems, these multiples of spreadsheets, these accounting issues, things like that, and that's what gets a new startup like us in the door with major enterprise companies, is that we're good at solving these things, and the future state, and there's been an announcement by Comcast a couple months ago at that same conference I was talking about with the yachts on Comcast Beach, about their having a blockchain initiative to do some of the same things I've been talking about here, is to allow content companies to have a rights managed shared database together.
Right.
And and we see something similar, but at a much larger scope, that where anyone can join that and be stratified within that, to enhance the value of their inventory, but also allow second and third party data companies to come on and on board. So today, most data is housed behind these large corporations like Experian, and we had that huge hack yesterday with Equifax.
No, that's horrible.
Right, but Equifax sells a ton of data. So
they do.
So I can buy data from Equifax and target ads against it now I can download that file and target ads against it. But it's but the people that actually sell those guys the data, those guys can join an easy network and publish their data in a similar way, and kind of start cutting out these centralized data stores of mass information, and have it on a blockchain network. And and then by doing that, we can reduce the cost.
And that's what Madhive is doing.
And that's where we're going. Yeah.
That's great. I want to thank you, Adam, for appearing on Blockchain 360.
Thank you.
We'll actually be making some announcements in terms of where I'm going to be speaking. I am actually leaving next week for Turkey, and then I have some speaking in October. If you're in Milan or Mexico City or Dubai, I'll be speaking at blockchain conferences in those three areas. But I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Blockchain 360.
The Blockchain 360 podcast is produced weekly. Have a question? Want us to interview someone specific? Wish to hear about a particular topic? Let us know. You can email podcast@blockchain360.co or tweet us on Twitter @blockchain360 or at our website blockchain360.co.